Angles. We're here with Buff Girl Michaela.
Hi guys.
She's going to help us out because we're going to be going over how to better your overhead press. Now, overhead press is an excellent compound movement for the shoulders, gaining strength and a little bit of size in there too. But don't worry, and this is again why we have Michaela to help out, is because it's kind of showing that anyone can do these exercises and everyone should do these exercises because they are perfect to include in any program. The problem is sometimes these bigger movements can be a little scary, so it's good to have someone here to maybe help you out and show you some of the things to keep in mind and some things to not do as well to make sure you prevent injury. And injury prevention is always a huge thing that we're advocates of, and one of those preventions is going to be warming up in mobility. So we're going to start out with some warm-ups and mobility, things to do before you even start any exercises. And with this, it's going to be pretty simple because we're just going to have a band here. You don't necessarily have to have a band. You can also have like a dowel or like a PVC pipe or anything, but anything to pretty much grab onto, and we're going to be doing some pass-throughs. So Michaela is going to be doing some pass-throughs, going to do some warm-ups because later she is going to be doing some overhead pressing. So first off, really simple, as you can see, you're just going to grab the band. A pretty wide angle too, is depending on your mobility in your shoulders. The wider you go, the easier it's going to be to pass through. And the closer you get, a little harder it's going to be. But as you become more and more mobile, you want to kind of close your grip in to make sure you're kind of stressing those shoulder joints to make sure they're as mobile as possible. And usually you'll do something like this, probably around 10 to 12 repetitions through, and maybe a couple sets of this. You don't have to go overboard with it. But as you can tell, she is elevating her shoulders as she brings it overhead and then depressing the shoulders when it comes all the way back around too. So it's really just working that shoulder and that full 360-degree motion there. And that's one thing to keep in mind too, the shoulders, they are the most mobile joint, or should be. So you always want to try to work them in their range of motion there, which is a lot, as you can see. And the problem is, being the most mobile joint, usually, unfortunately, has a tendency for a lot of injuries too. So you want to make sure they're always mobile and they're always strong too, because those muscles are going to strengthen those joints to make sure when they're pretty much supported in any position you put them in too. So really simple pass-throughs. Another one you can do as well is we have some dumbbells here, and it's just going to be external rotations. Now, external rotations are really going to be stressing the rotator cuffs. Now, the rotator cuffs are some small, couple muscles, built up a couple muscles that are going to help support the shoulder joint as well. And unfortunately, they're not really worked a lot. So to kind of work in the external rotation, so you're just basically going to be, elbows at your side, nice and slowly, externally rotating out. And as soon as you do that, you're going to feel those muscles contract there. And it's kind of a strange feeling too. It's this little, almost a little burning sensation in the rear delt area. So these muscles are very important for help stabilize the shoulder, but they're not worked out a lot. So you can either do them in a working set in your shoulder program, or you can use these as a warm-up as well, kind of get those muscles fired up and kind of wake them up a little bit, so that way they're nice and ready for any kind of like strenuous activity here. So same thing, about 10 to 12 reps, maybe a couple sets of that. You don't want to go overboard with it, and you also do, as you can tell, keep it very light too. The heavier you go, the bigger muscle groups are going to start taking over, and you're not really isolating the rotator cuff as much as you should. Another external rotation you can do, and not just from the side, you can bring it up here and kind of keep that L shape, nice and slow, down, and you're going to externally rotate up here, and we're going to add a little extra too, and it's going to be the Cuban press. So we're going to do the external rotation here. So bring it up to the top, and then press, back down, internal rotate, and external rotate, and keep these up. So this is a Cuban press. Now this is an excellent warm-up exercise you can do when you're getting ready for any pressing as well. So that's one of the key things you want to do in really any kind of workout or big compound movement, is just mobility and your warm-ups. You can do jump ropes, you can do some jogging, you can get on the bike to get the blood flowing, and then you can do some specific movements too to help warm yourself up in those motions you're going to be doing. So we're good with the warm-ups, and so you can go ahead and drop that weight, Michaela, if you want. All right, so now we're on to the overhead press. Pretty simple movement. It's a pressing motion, but there are some things you do want to keep in mind here. One, it's not a push press, so one thing right away you want to keep in mind is your legs are going to be straight, locked out, and flexed. And one thing is too, is some people forget, is they kind of just let their hip region just kind of loose. They don't really like contract it right, but what you want to do is you want to kind of like excellently rotate your feet into the floor. So as you can see, I'm doing this and kind of creating a little torque in my hip section, and it's immediately contracting my glutes. That's going to really stabilize that lower body, because the lower body is going to be your support system. It's going to be your foundation. You're going to have a little wider stance, so that way the wider the stance is the bigger base of support, so you're going to feel more stable. So if you have a really narrow stance, it's usually like a military press, because you're standing at attention. It's going to be a little bit more difficult because you're pretty much, that base of support is narrowed so much, you're going to feel a little less stable. So if you have a nice wide stance, you feel a little bit stronger, and you're going to have a stronger push there. So stance is important. So it's going to be a little bit wider, and we'll have you actually face camera, because it's going to be just so that way you can see the positioning. Yeah. So we'll go ahead and have you grab the bar, and the bar too, some people grab it really wide. As you can tell, the wider you grab it, the angle is going to change a lot in the pressing motion. You do want a straighter push, so if you narrow the angle here, all of a sudden your forearms are going to be more in line. And so that's going to be important too. So it's actually going to be a little bit more of a narrow grip here. Just a little bit outside shoulder, almost to shoulder ratio. Yeah, just about there. And then the bar, as you can tell, is almost placed right at the neck there. So pretty much you're going to get under it. You can bend your knees a little bit, just get under it. And then you're going to unrack it, step forward a little bit out of the rack, and then immediately get your stance ready. Yep. And your lower body is going to be nice and contracted. As you can tell here, elbows are running pretty tight to the body. The forearms are pretty much right vertical, and then the bar is right about at the clavicle here. Now sometimes, let me know if this is getting too heavy for you. I know you're just holding it, but sometimes what will happen is if you allow your shoulders to come forward and you're not retracting them, the bar can actually bring itself forward, and you're starting to dip your chest because the weight is now here. So one thing to contract those shoulders back, retract them, so that it brings the bar close to your body there. So now she's all set and ready to press, and wrists are pretty much straight. They're not too bent. They're not breaking too much.
Put it down.
Okay. So she got to rest. So while she's resting, as you can see, that was the proper positioning. I know it's sometimes hard to, because it's pretty much her pressing weight at this point. But when you're in that position, that was the starting position. One thing you don't want to do, again, is get a wide stance, let the wrist kind of break a little bit, have the bar here because you're not retracting. So this is the improper beginning right here. Your shoulders are forward, your wrists are just bent, and you're in a wide grip. It's really kind of like a bad pressing motion, and you don't want to lean back as you press too. You start doing this, everything's pretty much in the wrong position, and it just can lead to injuries. And you're just not going to press that much weight either because it's in the proper positioning. So we'll get Michaela back now. She got a little break.
To add to that, I was going to say that I think one of the most important things about shoulder press was learning to engage my core more to make me more stable. That definitely made a difference, for sure.
Absolutely.
With this movement.
And that's good to remember too. And that's something to forget a lot of times when you start pressing. You're like, well, it's just for shoulders and stuff, but there's so many other muscles that are engaged in a motion like this. To help stabilize it. So we'll get you in your first press. Here we go. So one thing you want to pay attention to is going to be as straight as you possibly can at press. If you watch a line of the bar, you want to see a pretty straight line from the beginning to end there. The problem is, go ahead and rock it out. The problem is a lot of times is you'll want to swing the bar out of the way of your head, because of course your chin, your nose, your face is all in the way of the bar. So you either want to swing it out, or you'll want to bend back. But the thing is, you have to dip your head out of the way. The bar will move slightly, but you really want to move your head out of the way for that press. And then at the top position, you want to get that full extension elevation of the scapula there. So when you're in this position, you want to kind of raise the scapula up, kind of almost shrug upwards, really contract the trapezius, because that's going to help stabilize at that top position, and then let it down at the bottom position. So 3 things to keep in mind when doing press is going to be your stance, contracting that lower body, kind of the hip and core region. It is retracting the shoulders to get that bar right in the place, the clavicle there. And it's also not leaning back. You really want to keep that nice vertical torso and arms, and just bobbing your head out of the way, get that nice vertical press, and then bring it down to bottom position. So as long as you kind of keep those three things in mind, you'll feel a lot stronger of a press and feel a lot more comfortable as well when you're doing it. And three things to keep in mind not to do is going to be you know, a loose stance where your knees are kind of bent, you're not really contracting your core, you're not going to feel stable. A wide grip with kind of your wrist kind of breaking a bit and leaning back while you're doing it. So nothing's really stabilized at that point. And yes, the shoulders are pressing it, but no other muscles are really helping out. And you're just going to feel a very unstable press. And eventually it could cause some injury down the road, or you're just not benefiting from an exercise like this as much as you could be. So there you go. That was a lot of information in a short period of time, but Michaela has been doing these presses for a while now, and your opinion on them?
I'd say the ways that it's benefited me most probably have been just, you know, overall more shoulder mobility, just feeling more stable up top, benefiting me in other exercises too, for sure, and then of course, you know, the aesthetic, because I like having toned, you know, muscular arms, and lifting heavy has definitely not made me bulky or anything, and I've been doing it for quite a while, so yeah, it's a great exercise.
Yeah, buff girl approved. Hell yeah, nice work. Yeah. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this. We're gonna be doing some of these like tutorials, quite a few of these tutorials in the future. If there's any ones you'd like to see in the future that we can do, let us know in the comments below. And we always appreciate that. So we're gonna do a little sign off here. So as always, stay buff.